So, hello and welcome for the second time this week. My name's Steve Pugh. I host something called the Growth Strategy Podcast. And what I try and do is introduce you to people that I believe can help add value to your business or career. And generally just really interesting people and guests. So what we do over the course of about 45 minutes is just have a great conversation about their life, their career, but also hopefully areas that we can add value as well. So if you want to get involved, you want to say hi to David or hi to me or send questions or abuse or anything you wish. I shouldn't actually say that because I also stream to Twitch, and Twitch is the most likely place to get said abuse. But regardless, it comes up on my screen, and hopefully, if you join us, it'll be a really good conversation. So David is a really experienced finance professional. He's done work for the BBC and lots of other really kind of cool stuff as well. And just before we came on air, we were kind of discussing about the prevalence and the importance on media and that kind of thing now for busy professionals and how we both use it. So actually, David, I might bring in to kind of talk about that as well. So I'll just bring you in.
Sure.
There we go. So people
Sure.
can now see you and hear you.
Excellent. Hello.
Good. So how's your Thursday gone so far, sir?
So far, all very good. Thank you. Very busy. Lots of client phone calls going on at the moment. And luckily, I really do enjoy what I do for work. So that helps. So it doesn't really feel like work. So it's all good so far. Thank you, Sue.
And I must congratulate you on your setup, because I speak to a lot of people. I do unofficially rate them on their setups, but I can tell you've got good lighting, good cameras, good setup, good acoustics. But almost for you and what you do, why did you choose to almost invest in some of that kit and kind of use it for your business or brand?
Well, I always think that you should always be your best for people and give them every reason as to why you should be talking to them, but also to be more engaging. And it all started around lockdown when I've done a lot of work with the BBC on radio, and it's all about everything there is about inequality, they call it, quotes. So when we went to lockdown and I still wanted to do the radio shows from here, I thought I need to actually invest in some really good kit so that I can do it in quality, at broadcast quality from home. But also we pivoted around as well. That's a bit of a cheesy word, isn't it? Pivoted. But we started doing webinars from home as well, because we were coming to people. And again, it was about quality. It was about looking professional. And instead of looking as though some people, when they do various things from home, it almost looks like you're looking up their nose and it's not very quality. They hit the desk and everything wobbles and moves. The sound can be different levels. It's just it grinds your gears a little bit. So I just think if you can make it as engaging and as pleasant as possible to look to, why not?
I must say,
It's also
speaking.
as well. It's nice to invest in some stuff. And
well, I think boys like geeky. Toys. We like kit.
Yeah.
You know, trust me, if you saw this room, and it's just it's the ultimate in just how far you can take that idea, but just for fun. And I think it's one of those things that I'm completely with you, that as for you doing what you do in my day job as a management consultant, people judge you on their experience of you. And although this live broadcast will probably go to about 20,000-30,000 people live, most people, because they're in their busy every day-to-day lives, might only watch it for 2-3 seconds. They click on it, have a check out, who's the guest, and But for me, that the importance is how can you deliver a feeling of quality, even if they only tune in for 3 seconds. And that's for me where the audio, which is arguably the most important, but the visuals and the lighting really kind of come in, because for me it then reflects back on everything about your professional behavior, your business. Because if you're willing to almost focus that much detail on this, well, then for my financial affairs and my accounts and my personal well-being, surely you would continue that. So I completely agree with you. And it was a little bit off tack, but likewise, because it was the topic that we mentioned before we kind of came.
No, it's fine. I just think it moves the needle a little bit more as well. So if somebody was only looking at tuning in for 3 seconds, they might tune in for 6, because actually it's better than they thought. So it's making it more engaging for people to watch and listen to.
Well, because the other side to it as well is that if we talk about personal and professional brand, it does make a difference that, yes, if you're looking at a management consultant or a financial advisor, and it's that element, ironically, that part of the reason we do a live broadcast is a way to kind of have a touch point every week or every so often where we just pop up that we're still here. But it also breeds familiarity in some ways where actually, even if, ironically, when I do these, 99% of people don't interact, but they still see it. And it's that element of where it's how, I work for myself, we're not a huge team, but it's almost how in the modern era can you compete with major broadcast organizations that have huge streams of people, but just as a way that you can use YouTube and webinars and to really kind of build a global business from home.
Yeah, and I think your point that you made earlier, Steve, as well, about the details, it's often those things that people notice, but if they're not there, they really notice them. So although it says, often we refer to it as a small detail, it's not in many people's eyes. So in an office that I used to have, for example, I was fastidious about light bulbs all working. It's a silly thing, perhaps, but when a client was walking to the office and they can see a light bulb's not working or flickering slightly, they're thinking, well, how much detail are you paying to my affairs if that's missing? You know, so it's about those, making it clean, tidy, professional. Everything should work. You know, make them feel at ease and that you are someone to be trusted, rather than giving them a reason not to. Simple things, but it's, you know, you don't have to do it, but you don't have to do anything, do you? But it makes a big difference.
Perfect. So one of the things I love to do on the podcast is to explore people's journey. That for me, as I kind of grew up, it was pre-internet because I'm old. And actually it was often quite hard to hear from different people that maybe are interested in finance or engineering or business or whichever. Just, well, how did you get into that? And like, were you always straight A students or which? And actually through exploring people's journeys, often it's actually quite an enjoyable conversation. It's often great for people that you know to, oh, I didn't know that about David. But actually it's also really inspiring for people that want to follow in your footsteps to be, well, actually, how did he do that? So I love to ask people about their journey and their backstory and that kind of thing. And often you do find common traits between entrepreneurs and people in different fields that actually I won't give away just yet, but I'm keen to kind of explore. So can I ask you, where did you kind of grow up?
So I've always grown up around Kent here in the UK, and actually all in the same area. So I come from around near Sevenoaks, and my parents are still just 3 miles down the road.
Wow.
I never really moved away. I didn't, that was it. I've always lived and worked around in this area. And strangely, because of the job that I now do, everything is incredibly convenient for me. So I could be in central London in 40 minutes. I could be on the Eurotunnel if I wanted to go away in an hour. Heathrow's an hour, and Gatwick's 40 minutes as well. So everything is really quite tidy and neat for me here. So why move? So that's where the business has grown, and that's where I've grown up, and I haven't moved. It's also quite nice doing business in your local community as well, which I think is really important. So we had an office, literally, we've moved it now because we ran out of room, but I had an office that I could see from my house.
Wow.
So that was a minute and a half's commute for me on foot. So that was really convenient, but it was nice to be involved and embedded in the area that I lived in. And I think people quite liked that as well, that they saw it in some way of giving back and employing people locally and so on. So I've never really moved too far from where I started, to be honest. Some might describe that as boring. I call it consistent.
But the thing is, you're obviously a man close to my own heart. So I live 4 minutes away from this office by car. So it's a 12-minute walk. But actually, I appreciate that kind of thing. And also it does build trust, because I know a lot of your work comes through word of mouth. Because actually you build that over time, and that's the kind of thing. But if people know you, they know your family, they know where you went to school, you have connections, mutual connections that they know, you're 100 times further ahead than a cold email, a cold call, or some guy based in the Philippines that might be just as good a financial advisor, but it's almost about having your niche. So I think it makes absolute perfect sense.
It's all about trust for me. And I think that if people are going to come to me to want financial advice, they're looking for someone they can trust. And actually, my father was a teacher locally in the area. So I go and see clients now, and they're saying, oh, I used to have a teacher called Mr. Braithwaite at school. It's like, yep, that's my dad. Also, when I'm talking and looking after people locally, it isn't just a transaction where you just deal with them and on to the next one. I could bump into them in the supermarket next month.
Yep.
So you've got to be able to look people in the eye, and you've got to do the right thing, which we do, but there's even more of a pressure to make sure that you do and you stay on your game, so that you don't drop your guard, so that you don't take the easy route, you do it the proper way, because everybody's around you. And if you do something wrong, it will spread a long, long way. So you've got a reputation as well. And one of our values of our company is 2 words: reputation matters. And you can't buy it, you have to earn it, but it takes a lot to earn it, but you can lose it really quickly as well.
very, very. I'm tripping over words today, I think. But no, it's very, very, very true. I think I need some more coffee. I'll drink whilst you answer your next question. So what were you like at school? Were you into sports? Were you academic? What were you like?
Awful. All of the above. I was awful at sports. I didn't really get the whole rugby, the football, cricket thing. So as team sports, I was appalling. I was actually only okay when it came to individual things. So I did a lot of swimming. I think that's partly because my father did as well.
Okay.
And I used to quite enjoy playing one-on-one sports like badminton or doing athletics, where it was just me against everybody. Academically, appalling. I was not great at it at school at all. And a lot of people see me doing what I do now and think, oh, you must have gone through and grade A student and then, university and A levels. Not a bit of me. I just about scraped through 5 exams with a bare pass, and that was it. And I think my problem that I had with school was it wasn't so much the work per se, it was the point of why I was working. I couldn't see the connection between, well, why do I need to know about chemistry and things? How is that practical in the real world? I couldn't see the connection. Whereas I had friends of mine at school that said, well, I want to be a lawyer, therefore I need to get this, and this qualification, then I'm going to go to that university. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was very much finding my feet in the world of work. I knew I wanted to earn money. And I knew that money opened up freedoms for you in terms of whether you could go out and do things, whether you could buy your first car, and even the basics. So right from the get-go, I was always a hard worker. So I had at one point, I think, 4 jobs, all part-time around my school. So I was a paper boy, I worked in a kitchen, I worked in an electrical shop, and also did some work on the side for somebody else as well. Because I was all about, right, how can I do this? If I want to create a future, it's down to me. I'm responsible for it at the end of the day. There's no point in just waiting and hoping it'll knock on the door. And I was always very diligent in the work that I then did do to be a good person for that person to employ me. So I'd turn up on time, never be sick, all of that. So my work ethic was a lot better than my school ethic, it's fair to say. But it saw me through, that's the thing. It got me through. And I do appreciate now, and my son, who's a teenager now, he's at school, clearly. And, trying to tell him to do the right thing at school when maybe you didn't can be a little bit tricky. But I've been there and got the T-shirt for how much harder work it may be been for me. So I'm just trying to stack the odds in his favour and make sure that he's doing the best that he can do. And he is, which is thankful. So doesn't take after his father.
But it makes perfect sense. And you'd be surprised at how many entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial people, it's obviously, they're still smart, bright people. They just didn't have the drive. They didn't understand why they wanted to do stuff. And I was similar. And I think, I didn't necessarily find my passion or my drive or why I wanted to learn or the reason to learn probably until second year at university. And by that point, you've already kind of had your card marked based on GCSEs and different things. But it's a very kind of common trait. But also on the flip side, you'll have people that might have perhaps left school at 16 with minimal pass grades, but they still want to do something. And then you're a prime example of how actually you can achieve whatever you want if you work hard and learn and find whatever it is that you're passionate about and kind of just go for it.
And I think that passion comes from that sense that maybe at school I wasn't much good. So I went out to try and prove that I can do something. That was the motivation, because I wasn't that good at school. And also I think from my parents' point of view, and I probably understand this now being a father a lot more, is that from that point of view, I think they already thought that I was probably going to be harder work, should we say. Oh, crikey, where's he going to end up because of the fact that he's not that well educated? So part of my driving force as well, it sounds maybe a bit funny to some people, but I want to make my mum and dad proud. I like it when I do things and they tell me, oh, you've made me so proud, and it's like, that's good. And that's worth more than all the qualifications in the world are, the fact that I've made someone proud. And it goes through to my clients as well, and the people and the work that I do with coaching and everything else. I want to do them proud too. So I get very big satisfaction from having that sort of feedback, and that's worth its weight in gold. It's the same thing in what I do with financial services. Yes, okay, you can earn money, everything, but actually what really gives me a kick is when you get a card saying thank you. That to me is worth a lot more, because I know that I validated that I did the right thing, and that's really super important to me. You do enough of the right thing, the money follows, is what they say. So
I think with a lot of people, it's that element of, it's what do you do when nobody's watching? I think it's really true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's also a
100%.
flip side, is that like we've all worked for clients where they don't necessarily appreciate how much work that you put in. But for me, it's always, I try and take pride in my own work. So ironically, in an hour's time, I go, that was a really good interview. It was a really great guest and I really enjoyed it, almost regardless of what the outcome is. And I think for me, that comes back to kind of Boy Scouts. I was in Cubs and Scouts, and it was the, I always promised to do my best. But this,
that was it.
But this is also
me
quite
too,
funny.
so.
Is that it exactly right that with, I think you tend to grab it. So I didn't know that, for anyone that watches this, but so I went on to become a Queen Scout. I was in all the way through. But it's that element of where I think you, rightly or wrongly, or you gravitate to people that have similar values. And I think ironically, your values are often what bind strong friendship groups together. So at university or school, you're friends with the people that live close, or the cool kids, or whichever. But especially after you kind of graduate and get older, it's about people that have similar values. That's often who you find successful relationships with. But for me in business as well, you kind of know who's taking the piss a little bit and who isn't as straightforward and as honest as you are.
Yeah.
That actually, it's cool. I like that.
Yeah, and I think as well that I tell people this as well when I'm with them, whether it's a client or a friend of mine, in that you know you're in the right company when you feel better off for having been in their company.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll often say to people, we could go out for a simple walk around a coast path around near here, and I did it fairly recently with a friend of mine, and I said, I've had the best time because I feel better off from having been in your company and had a great conversation with you. You know what it's like when time flies. You know, it's just that sort of person that you want to hang around with. Or I'll often call them the balcony people, the people that want to raise you and help you and be there to support you, instead of the basement people, the ones that kind of drag you down a little bit. And I often call the atmosphere hoovers. You know, the people that can suck the life out of anybody when they want to. You know, you just think, and you feel a bit depressed from being around them because you just think they've brought you down. Yep. So it's looking for those people in your life as well that are there to encourage you and perk you up and make you feel better for being in their company. And they're really valuable people. You need to hold on to them.
No, got it. I love it. So can I ask you about your career journey? Because we're going to move on to Citrus Financial and all the other stuff that you do. But almost, how did you go from the chap at school that maybe wasn't that engaged to where you are now?
Well, it was a story where I left school and my mum and dad wouldn't let me leave school. And I said, you're not leaving school until you've got a job to go to. And I applied to 2 places and I got accepted by both. And I went to actually go and work for a local stockbrokers to start with, which sounds very fancy. It wasn't. I was in the admin at the lowest of the low, and I spent all day writing out checks because at the time nothing was electronic then. Back in the day, no computers or anything like that. Everything was handwritten. And I remember speaking to a chap there, and I was a bit concerned that I wasn't really going anywhere. And I said, look, where can I go? Where's the career path in here? And he said, well, you know, in 5 years' time, you could be where I am. And I looked to where he was. I thought, I don't want to be you in 5 years. He was there working all the hours God sends. He was smoking heavily. And his social life revolved around the people in the office. He didn't seem to have any external. I thought, well, that's a bit of a red flag, really. So then went off, became an estate agent because I thought that would be quite fun, and it was. It was great fun. And that was my first foray into financial services, really, because the people I worked for, they wanted to have, it was like a one-stop shop. So you could come into your real estate agent or your estate agent, you'd sell your property through them. That person would also do the mortgage for the buyer, the seller, everything. So we had these little one-man, one-stop shops dotted around. Unfortunately, they went into receivership. That disappeared. But the guy that headed up the financial services side at the time just set up on his own, which was great. And that was where he went. And I went to go and work for a bank for a couple of years. And that was great for me. But I got really frustrated working in a bank because there was another bank dead opposite me. And it was in a really narrow sort of shopping centre walkway. So the point where you could barely get a car between the buildings. And I used to have clients that were sitting in front of me to open a savings account or do a mortgage with me or whatever they were doing. But I had the other bank opposite. I could see in their window their posters. And I knew that the people that were sitting in front of me, I wanted to tell them, look, if you go across the road to the other bank, you've got a better rate there or you've got a better deal there. But I couldn't because I was working for that bank. So I found it really frustrating. So I ended up working for a while with the guy that left the estate agency, financial services. He said, come to me, I've got loads of clients. You're going to earn a fortune. And it's the biggest lie that there is in financial services. But I wanted to then be able to give the right advice and tell people, was one of my biggest skills is empathy, I've since found out. But I wanted to be able to talk to clients and say, if I was you, but knowing what I know, this is what you should be doing. And that's all I wanted to do, was just be honest with people and tell them the truth. So I worked with him for a while. He disappeared off and did his own thing. So I set up on my own and set Citrus up. And that's where I've gone from there. So a little bit of falling into it, but I found my niche. And I think that my drive really is the fact that I like engaging with people. I enjoy running my own business. It just so happens to be in financial services. So I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've got 2 other businesses as well as the coaching side that I do. And I enjoy that, and I enjoy the interaction with the people. And a lot of the clients that I have got, I tell them as well, look, actually, I feel better off from having been in your company. And I come away from these clients, time's flown, we get on like a house on fire, and we're on first name terms, and they've got that trusted partner, but also I've got them for life as well. Okay. And that's really, really important to me. And you see them. So I was speaking to somebody before I came on this call, and I helped them buy their first house over 20 years ago and did a mortgage for them.
Wow.
Since then, we're doing all the pension planning for the pair of them. And now their daughter, who's just turned 19, who wasn't even born when I first met them, is now wanting to come to me for some financial advice. And that's where you realize that it's quite scary, or how old I've got, because suddenly it's like, well, how can that be right? Because I still think that we're all still the age that we used to be. I think I'm probably Peter Pan, really. But yeah, that was how I got to where I am, and just set up other businesses that complement it. So I've got a conveyancing company, and I've got a healthcare business as well. And they're like a sister group of companies, so we can all help each other out and refer clients so that they don't go off somewhere else, is why we've done it. So yeah.
No, it makes sense, because people always talk about the lifetime value of a customer. Yeah. And ironically for you, it actually is the lifetime of the customer. Because, you know, again, if you provide a good service, a good price, and people like you, you're going to get all of their business, but their kids' business, their friends' business. And actually, there was a former guest called Jenny Smith that's a professional networker. And she said something which really kind of blew my mind. It was almost that when you meet someone for the first time, you both meet everyone that they've ever met, and you also get to meet everyone they ever will meet. Because actually, if you provide something that nobody else does, oh, you've got to meet this guy, David. He's fantastic. He does this. And it's to make advocates that actually, because what you do has such an important part of in people's lives, I imagine it could be a really good business. So it's fascinating.
And then there's also the fun of it as well, because you never know where it goes. You never know who those people know. And I often say this in the office: if we get somebody that comes up, we don't get many, most of it's all referral and word of mouth. But if we do get somebody that's found us from the internet, let's say, that's great. We also get clients that come to us from the media work that I do. That's great. But what I really like is then when you meet somebody that they've referred you to, and that's almost like the icing on the cake, because we never would have met those people before. Not in a million years would it be likely that they would come to us. But here they are, and they have. And that's the magic and the joy. You never know. And you get clients that come back to you years and years and years later, and we're very privileged to be part of their life and see them growing up, and families happening, divorces happening, deaths, and all these are other things that go on in a normal life. We get to be part of that, and we're very privileged that we are. So it's good.
No, that's fantastic. Because right at the start of the conversation, we talked about media, I guess, in some ways, and brand and video and content. And the irony is that if people had seen you or heard you on the radio, and they saw you on the Martin Lewis show or this or whichever, when they do eventually get in touch, they're already going to trust you so much more, because it's the whole thing of, well, if the BBC trust David and Steve trust David, oh, well, I must. And it's just, I think people underestimate how important almost putting yourself out there is. So I need to ask, how old were you when you started your first business?
It was 1994 was when I went self-employed. So actually, at the time of this recording, it is 29 years exactly to the day.
Wow.
So this is my 29th anniversary. I'm spending it with you.
Oh, so you were, I'm going to guess 20-something, 24?
Yes, I would have been. I've got to think about that, 26.
Okay. Well, obviously, I don't know how old you are, so I was just guessing. But it would have been very embarrassing if you were actually either way. Anyway. But what's interesting though is that I think, again, that 24, 26, 30-year-old age range
Mm,
is when a lot of entrepreneurs start their businesses, because
yeah,
it's almost where you've got enough world experience to have a feel that I don't like that, I like that, I think I could give this a go.
mm,
And then it's different for different people, but sometimes perhaps you don't have the same baggage or responsibilities that other people do, that almost, even if it doesn't work, you haven't literally risked the house and that
yeah,
kind of thing. No,
yeah.
fantastic. Because it must do it with, that's one of the things that I love, is almost that people often worry about business too much, but almost in some ways I still view it as a game, because there are certain rules to, abide by. But actually, if you enjoy it and you enjoy the process, you can, I assume you still enjoy doing what you're doing 29
I
years
love it.
later.
Yeah, I do. And I actually say to clients this, and they think I'm crazy when I'm talking about things like, particularly pensions, bizarrely. I always say to them, I love pensions. And they look at me like I'm an alien, because they've come to me because they can't stand them. But it's a good job somebody does, and that's the thing. But I do love what I get to do and do day to day. And I love it even more the more and more I've been doing it.
So, one question that I had lined up was almost, and I know it's an obvious answer, but I'm intrigued to see where you go with the answer, is that why do you think it's important both for individuals and businesses to look after their finances?
It's a big thing for me. Money makes the world go round is the expression, and money can give you freedoms. It can also give you restrictions. And it isn't all about the money, about having a Ferrari or whatever car you want, although some people that is it. Most people want to know that they're comfortable and that they're okay. But if you haven't got enough of it, or it feels like things are getting out of control, it puts you in a very difficult place mentally, not just internally, but externally
Hmm.
with the people that you have relationships with. So it's really good idea to have a good relationship with you and your money and your personal finance as part of the equilibrium with what you're
Hmm.
what you're doing in your life. So the more in control of the money that you feel, generally, broadly speaking, that a lot of the people are quite happier for doing so. It's just not an easy subject for everybody to talk about, especially when you haven't got enough of it.
Yes.
So it
Yeah.
can be really tricky if you are with your back against the wall and you've got credit cards, you can't afford the life that you've got, or your situation's changed. It makes it very hard, and people then wish that they had more of it. But it's a real mood swing. So
Hmm.
when you have got it, and I always joke with people, not joke, but so I want to get people in the position where you control the money and the money doesn't control you, and that's the balance. And it's just trying to find that sweet spot really where you're broadly okay,
Hmm.
because it will give you happiness, but it can also give you a lot of sadness without the right amount of it as well.
Because when we mentioned before about values, and
Mm,
this is something that when you date people, or at least I've never done it, it's so your approach to money to me is an important thing. And often you would never find out someone's real approach for years, until it's far too late that you're either handcuffed in or not. But actually, I have friends and family that they like to spend what they can, and,
mm,
spend money in different ways. And it's almost with age, you realize, of course, you can spend your money however you wish. But
mm.
as a prime example, my second ever job was in a supermarket, and I was on £3 an hour, I think. It was a quick save supermarket, if you ever remember it. But the first time I ever saved up £1,000 and actually looked at my bank account, age
Yeah.
17 or whatever it was, and I was proud of myself. And it's almost
Mm,
that element now, is that I get my fulfillment through doing creative pursuits and stuff like this, that actually I don't really care about the money. It's about what can I do with it.
mm.
But, you have other people that are still lovely, lovely people, but they just have a different approach. And I think, again, with you, it's you want someone to just trust and, have that same approach that you do. But it's often why do you think it is that people find it difficult to talk about money?
I think particularly I find it maybe over in the UK, certainly. Um, People always, when I go to France a fair bit, when I'm traveling through France, all the cars over there are all pretty much the same. Nobody really seems to care. There's no sort of perceived hierarchy.
That's true.
There's not much peacocking. Whereas I think over here in the UK, certainly I've noticed it, it's about people comparing themselves to other people all the time. They're seeing, well, how do I benchmark against that? Well, they've got that. I should have this too. They don't always seem that satisfied with what it is that they have got. So I find that tricky. for a lot of times. So I think there's that unhealthy aspect to do with it as well. There's, like, for example, sales of televisions peak before things like football competitions are on, because they go have all their friends around to their house and they want to show their new TV.
Yeah.
Well, that's great if you've got the money to do that, but it's not how the world can always work. And I think if you have got friends that are a little bit plastic like that, that are only going to appreciate you because of what you've got or what you've apparently achieved. And there's the old adage, isn't it, where you spend your money to buy things to impress other people that you don't really like.
Yeah.
You know, the people that do like you and are genuinely interested, and you don't give them monkeys whether you've got £1 or $1 million. It doesn't matter. They want you. And that's the key. So we can get quite hung up over here. But also, you know, my parents never spoke to me about what money they earned. It was always a bit, no, we don't discuss salaries and what savings that we've got. And actually to the point now where I do the financial planning for my parents, not surprisingly. And even now, when I have a meeting with them and they're talking about what they've got in their savings account and what they earn in terms of pension, it feels a little bit uncomfortable for me sometimes because, well, this isn't normal. Whereas I can go up to any other client that isn't family and just talk quite openly about it. And it's, but yeah, people are quite reticent to talk about what it is that they've got, maybe because of what they haven't got. I don't know.
I just think it's a fast. I'm always interested in people, and it's just. But you make a very good point about French cars. Spain seems to be similar because they've all got dents in them. But ironically, the people with the most money often have the worst cars because they don't care. Yeah. And I find out it's true, but almost like now I'm at the point where in the past I've had some nice cars and I drive it's a Kia, but it's almost, I love it. And I now at 40 couldn't care less about what anyone thinks about anything. But I think it's when you find your contentment and that kind of thing as well.
It is. And I had a really nice car that I had a dream that I would always have an Aston Martin.
Wow. Which one?
It's been on my bucket list. I had the Vantage. It was in grey. It was on my bucket list, my goals, because I'm a bit of a James Bond fan, and it's got little connotations with that, which I know makes people laugh. Then 3 years ago, I got it. I had this car, and I remember thinking at the time, I've done it. This is a lifetime achievement complete. And it was great. I sold it because it's kind of, I've done it. I don't need to prove that I can. I know that I could still, and I'm choosing not to now. It's almost though I got it out of my system. And I never bought it at all to be, look at me and flash or anything like that. That actually is crass. You know, I loved it when friends of mine said, oh, my son would like to go out. Can you take him for a drive? And it's like, of course I would. And I could see the joy in his face. I loved it when I had the roof down. I could drive through country lanes down to the coast on my own or with my son, and we'd have these great conversations. That was what I got out of it. It was never a look at how clever that I am at all. And if anything, that would repel me. But yeah, I sold it 2 years later, and I was like, I'm happy. And people say, oh, do you miss it? I was like, yeah, sometimes I do, but no, I've done it. I'm happy. I don't need it. You know, so much like you, I've got a sort of regular car, and that's. But you know, you could get something better if you wanted to. I do, but we're choosing not to. And again, it comes back to the money, where we're controlling the money and the money's not controlling us. And there's a big difference.
We're more similar than you might think. I had a very similar experience, but I'll save that for another day. One of the questions I would love to ask, because one of my fellow presenters on this channel, Bashak, she actually works for the BBC. She does lots of production and lots of different things. But for you and your speciality and what you do, how did you get into TV and radio?
So this is a funny story. So this is about 20 or so years ago. I used to listen to a financial advisor that used to go on local radio, and it was a phone-in. And I used to listen to him because it was always interesting hearing how he put things across on radio, which can be quite complicated. So I used to learn from him. I used to say, oh, that's really good. But I used to pretend in the car when I was driving along, right, how would I answer that? And then hear how he would. So I was almost answering it out loud as though I was in the studio. It's quite strange. One day they announced, sadly, when I tuned in to listen to him, really sorry, we can't bring you the normal finance show because unfortunately we've got some sad news. The guy that did it has passed away, which is tragic. So I rang the radio station and said, I can do that. They said, have you done it before? I said, well, yes. And in my head I had, because I've been doing it in the car when I'm driving along. So I found myself 2 weeks later sitting in a radio studio with headphones on, doing the phone in. And I loved it. And it was fearful, yep. And that was where it all started. So I started there over 20 years ago. And from there, I then got asked to do some television. But what happens in that sort of world, as you probably know from your co-presenter, is that they move departments, they move around, and it's quite a close-knit network. So again, I always made sure that I was the perfect guest. Turn up on time, say what you're going to do exactly what they expect you to do, no surprises, and say thank you afterwards, not just the presenter, but to the people behind the scenes that actually make it happen.
Yeah.
So I was just the perfect guest, and then your name gets gets asked around. And then I found myself on probably the busiest one, which was the Martin Lewis Money Show in 2022. And that was watched by 3 million people. So that was the sort of the peak of it all. But I'm still regularly on the BBC. I have a half-hour slot on local radio still to this day. And I love it. And it's led to podcasts. It's led to all sorts of other things that happen. But it's about, for me, it's more about, I get a kick out of explaining complicated financial aspects in plain English that people can understand, and not to use there was an expression in a James Bond film a little while ago with Q when he was disappearing. John Cleese was disappearing down to the floor. He said, "Oh, you're cleverer than you look." He said, "Well, better than looking cleverer than you are." So I never want to look clever. I always want to put things across in a way that people can go, "I get that now."
Yeah.
So to coin a phrase, it's like a penny should drop somewhere when people are listening and they go, "Oh, I've understood that because he said it in a completely different way."
Yep.
And that's what I get a real joy out of, is making the complex simple and talking English.
But what I love about that story as well is that you took the entrepreneurial route. An opportunity came up that you didn't expect, and you threw your hat in the ring.
Yeah.
What I think holds back 90% of people, they're always too scared, or someone else acts first, or whichever. And that takes bravery, it takes confidence. And I often joke with people, often when I do these things, I do it to practice for that one time when the phone rings and they need someone, and I've practiced presenting for 10 years. Yeah. And it's just, I kind of love that story. And then likewise, same with Martin Lewis. I was actually going to ask you about him because I remember, I'm trying to think when it was. There was a certain point where he was thrust into the media, where actually now often my mum implicitly will trust anything Martin Lewis says. And I'm not saying that's a right or wrong thing, but it's true. But the point is, he's now a trusted advisor, but to millions of people, because actually it's a phrase I use more often than I should, but it's almost for people. Everyone has a bullshit meter. Where when you look someone in the eye and you look at them on camera and you can see their body language, do you trust them or do you not trust them? And is there enough evidence over time that actually there's some correlation between being correct? And I think with Martin Lewis, he's very good at, okay, so this is new pensions, or this is how interest rates are going to change, and this is how it could affect you. And exactly as you say, because often not everyone is as intelligent as everyone else. But nobody wants to ever feel stupid. And the truth is, if you really understand a topic exceptionally well, you can explain it very simply in a way that people that also understand it are never going to feel that, oh, you've dumbed that down. Yeah. But actually, you can bring people with you. And I think there's a real skill to do that.
There definitely is. And that's where Martin Lewis has picked up his niche, which is almost fighting in the corner for the people that can't. So he's really good at campaigning and changing legislation, all for, dare I say it, the smaller people, the average Joe on the street that are impacted by these things because they haven't got a voice. They might not know quite what they're doing. So what he's doing is a campaign, but also an education piece as well. And he's very good at that. And he's made differences. So, yeah, things are different as a result of what he's done. So, yeah, and he's become a household name, hasn't he? So that's it. But I've worked with him several times, and yeah, he's an enthusiastic guy to keep up with, should we say.
Sounds good. So can you tell us about Strategic Coach?
Yeah, so Strategic Coach came around. It was around the time that my son was born. We were expecting my son. So this is in 2009. And what I found was that I started the business, and you grow a business. But when you're growing a business, what happens is that it became almost like a treadmill that was getting faster and faster and faster. Yeah. So the reason why I set up in the first place on my own is for freedom. So I wanted to be able to take time off when I wanted and not have to fill a holiday form in. So I wanted freedom of time. I wanted freedom of money so I could earn what I wanted to and when I wanted to do it. I wanted to have freedom of relationships, so deal with what clients I wanted to deal with in a way that I wanted to deal with them. And then also the purpose, to make the parents proud, to make people proud. So I wanted those freedoms. What happened is, particularly the one about time, it started taking over me. And being candid, I struggled with sort of some mental health and bits and pieces. And then we were expecting our son. And I wanted to be the dad that was there. I didn't want to keep working all the hours. And unfortunately, in the role that I had created for myself, instead of having a lot of freedom, I had less of it. I'd go and see people of evenings. I would see people at weekends. I had the so-called smartphone that would follow you everywhere, answer a phone call, messages galore. I was never off. I was always on. So you're never really present with people. And I really didn't want to have that happen with my son. And there was a moment with my dad. I went and played golf with him years ago. This is way before that. And I was on the phone, on the mobile, on the golf course, on the phone call. I remember just looking around while I was chatting to him on the phone and just seeing him looking down because he was waiting for me because on the phone call. And he just shook his head like that. And he didn't know I'd seen him, but you knew he was disappointed. Now, I'm at the position now where I can't take him for a game of golf because he can't walk around a golf course. So that's opportunities missed. I didn't want to have that with my son. So strategic coach, what they do is kind of a little bit of unraveling your business, get you thinking clearer, and actually you can earn more, you can do more, but you do it in less time. What we're not asking you to do if you want to double your business is work twice the number of hours. It's about being more strategic about what you spend your time doing and who you're deciding you're interacting with, and also having a vision, having a plan, having a goal. So I joined up Strategic Coach in 2009 to coincide with my son. I've never missed a sports day. I've rarely worked any weekends. I stopped working evenings and the business has grown. But I needed that structure and that support behind me to help do that. So what then happened was I was then getting coaching with Dan Sullivan over in Toronto once a quarter, which I still go across to for now. And they approached me and said, would you like to become a coach? I was like, oh, okay. Never saw that coming. And a bit like the radio, when you want to say no, but you say yes. I said yes. So went over for an audition and so I now am a coach for Strategic Coach, helping other people who are in a similar position to me or in different positions with their business, almost unravel what it is that you've got, get from the complexity, but give you a moment of peace away from your business to work on it and not be constantly in it, getting faster and faster and faster. I want people to have more freedom. I want them to spend time with the children, with the families, the friends, the loved ones, and almost give them permission to do so, but the strategy is to how you do so. So you think when you set your business up, a lot of people come up with a business plan. And that's great. And you start off. How often do people stop in their businesses and go, you know what, I'm going to spend one day a quarter thinking about and working on my business so that I'm set up for the next quarter, the next year, 3 years, and lifetime? Rarely does that happen. So we give this, if you like, enforced pause and that space and the thinking tools around which to do that. And so that you've set off on the world so people can grow personally, professionally, whatever they want to do, but within a strategy and a framework with which to do it. And it's literally changed my life. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here talking to you, for example. Without doubt, I'd be too busy or I'd be rushing around doing things. And it's straightened me out an awful lot and giving me that freedom that I've wanted for so long. And I'm thrilled with it now. But it takes a while, it takes some effort. And you have to want to change as well. And that's the thing, is recognizing, look, things aren't right. What can I change? And I've never been in a happier, better position than what I am now. And it just gets better. So that's why Strategic Coach was a part of me. And you think if you go to the gym, you're probably going to have better results with a personal trainer, maybe than relying on yourself. And it's just somebody there that's anybody who's an elite athlete, whatever, everyone's got coaches. Yet the one big thing that is really pivotal in our life, and it links back to that money conversation that we had at the start, and yet we don't get coached on it. Why not? And actually, probably a lot of people should.
No, I think it's a valid point. Often you see it in Disney kids films. There's a scene, generally about 20 minutes into the film, Home Alone or Elf or you name it, where the busy dad misses the kids into basketball game, play, whichever, happens. And what was funny is that so I'm a chartered mechanical engineer by background, and I run engineering firms as part of my consultancy. And it was now probably about 8 years ago that with my wife, we was to go back to Liverpool for a family weekend. And we were having this piece of kit made up in Newcastle, and there was a problem. And basically, we'd driven from Newcastle to Liverpool. We'd been there for maybe, I don't know, a few hours, and I had to come back. But we were meant to be there, I think it was a family christening or something. And I'd become, although we don't have kids, I'd become the bad Disney dad. In terms of the family, I'd allocated time. And I knew it then at that point. And ironically now, I'm actually quite good at balancing things. But I completely get how these things happen. And one of the other big things is that people often... So when I work with different people, they want to create a business and they want to exit at a certain point for a certain valuation, but they never actually figure out how to make it run without them. And it's a very valid thing that essentially you have a hamster wheel that speeds up and it speeds up and it speeds up. And actually just having the cognizance to be able to look at it and understand it and look at the structures and get the support, because the truth is not everyone knows how to do that. So I get it 100%.
And they don't always teach you this sort of stuff at school as well. There's lots of things that I'm now learning through Strategic Coach, which was, how do you hire someone properly? I used to hire people by default because there was a friend of a friend and they'd come on board, and you wonder why it doesn't quite work out. But if you could be more strategic about the hiring, but you just hit the nail on the head there. I think when people set up their own business, they do it for all those freedoms. They want to be an entrepreneur and they really enjoy what they do. But soon it starts taking over you. And actually what you haven't got is a business. You've now got a job. The business is holding you to ransom. So it's about breaking that cycle and creating what a Strategic Coach we call a self-managing company, where you can do the bits in it that you really like. You can delegate all the bits that you don't want to do to other people, and you create the life for yourself that you've always wanted. Why did you set up in business in the first place? It wasn't probably to run around and get stressed and think, oh, I can't wait to get out. Now, something else I'll share with you, which was when I was going through some of those times back in the mid-2000s, I was the person that was paying the most amount of money into the pension, more than any other client was. Now, it wasn't to brag to say that, oh, I'm really serious about pensions. It was because that was my escape plan.
Got you.
The quicker I fund into this, the quicker I can get out. And this is my own business. I didn't love my own business. Now, you wouldn't stay in a relationship with somebody you didn't like. So suddenly I'd stuck with this relationship with a business I didn't like anymore. So I had to kind of break that cycle. And that was how I did it, was with the help of them. Now, you've still got to do the work. They don't come in and do it for you, but you've got to be open to the idea and kind of break that. So, it's an interesting question. Have you got a job or have you got a business? And there's a bit of a difference. And it's recognizing that and thinking, do I need to change it or not?
So where can people find out, or how can people find out more about Strategic Coach? Do they reach out to you? Is there a website? Are there socials?
Well, I've actually had a landing page made for everybody who's watching and listening to this. So if they go on to davidbpodcast.com, that's davidbpodcast.com. Yeah, there's some free resources on there that they can look at. And there's strategiccoach.com website as well. But if they go to davidbpodcast.com, there's some free downloads, some thinking tools they might want to use, and an ebook as well that they can download all for free. So they can find out more on there. And get in touch with me if they want to as well. But I'm a big advocate because I know how much it changed me. But I'm kind of on the other side of the fence. But I'm still getting coached. I still get coached once a quarter, even though I am a coach. And the interesting thing about being a coach for them as well is that they don't coach you how to become a coach. You've got to be a business owner. Otherwise, how can you tell people what to do if you're not doing it yourself? And I remember the irony with some of the banks over here in the UK, whether it's the same all around the world, but if you're going to go and start a new business up, you go and see the bank manager with your business plan, and he or she would decide if it's a good idea. Well, you work for a bank. How do you know? So it's a bit ironic when you've got somebody like that when they don't quite know all the time what they're maybe talking about. So we have to walk the talk as well as actually talk the talk. So we're out there doing it, so we can understand what it's like running your own business. So yeah, it's good fun.
Fantastic. Just before we continue, do you have to shoot off at any point for another call?
No.
It's the beauty of live, is that I wanted to check. I didn't want to see the panic in your eyes as you start trying to glance towards the clock.
No, I'm all yours.
No, perfect. It's good to check. I've done hundreds of these things now. I can normally tell if something's going on or someone's trying to grab
Did I have
things.
a panic look in my eye then? Or...
No. I wanted to check. I wanted to give you the full strategic coach thing that you could clip up
Yeah.
and we can share. But then likewise, just check in just in case.
No, we're all good. I'm in no hurry.
So out of interest for yourself, because I think and I'll share mine. What's your like personal dream for the future?
This is a really vague one, but just to be happy, and have the things around you that make you happy. So I love spending time with my family. I'd love to do more of that and have time where actually I can choose where and who I work with, and that does happen quite a lot now anyway. But just to be happy and content, really, with your lot, and recognizing, when's enough.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can keep going and keep going and keep going. What's the end game? And you mentioned earlier on about exit from businesses, and maybe we should look at doing that. And we've got a plan behind all the scenes for how that might look. And it's just to be happy and content, really, and wake up each day excited to do what it is you're going to do, and not wake up thinking, oh, that's a big win for a lot of people. Just waking up and being excited for the day ahead, like it is when you go on holiday. It's always really easy maybe to get up early when you're on holiday and you've got all the time in the world. How do you feel towards your end of your holiday? Are you thinking, oh, I've got work on Monday? Well, maybe that's not the right work, So it's just to be happy and contented in what I'm doing, really.
No, excellent. Because I think I'm very, I knew, obviously we haven't planned this, but I knew that was something similar to me, that almost where I purposely now built a business where I do the bits that I love to do this. I love to speak to people. I love the creativity. But then likewise, I'm training for the GB basketball team, the over 40s squad. Wow. And that's part of my about coaching. But likewise, I have time to do that. Yeah. But likewise, when I set up the startup that I also run, because I bootstrapped it, I had to work really hard to earn all the money to pay for everything. After Christmas, so now I guess 9-10 months ago, I'd pay for everything. So then I could wind down other things where actually now, after this, I've been in since 7 a.m. But actually, you know what? I can go home. I've got a basketball game tonight. But actually being able to build a business and the lifestyle that I want, because in many ways, like our mortgage will be paid off soon. And it's that contentment that even if I had 30-40 million pounds in the bank, I would still be stood here doing this right now and working with charities because I actually enjoy it. And I think that's always the goal that I think a lot of people miss. And I've certainly worked in jobs that I hated. And actually, it's nice that, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. There are times when there are pressures and the stresses and client stuff and whichever. But generally, I think it's really nice to have a goal to aim for.
Yeah, definitely. And it's life's too short. This isn't, I know it's an old saying, but it's not a rehearsal. There's a wall chart that I saw recently, which it's called the number of weeks, I think it is.
We get shown the same adverts. We'll be in the same demographic of Google's marketing algorithm that sends.
That's it, yeah. So exactly the same thing. So we're life short, and you can see all these number of weeks that you got left, and you think, crikey, actually, it is about enjoying life and doing what you can, and don't spend it with people that aren't people you want to spend it with, and try and be happy. And money helps do that, I know, but it's not everything. A lot of people with very little are very, very happy. And there was a book actually I've written, got it in my bookshelf over here, where they worked out, I think it was around at the time about £80,000 a year was peak happy. Once you've got to that point, if you earn double that, you're not twice as happy, you're just a little bit happier. So it's about finding where your enough is as well. So don't keep building something, and recognizing when your ladder's on the wrong wall. Don't keep climbing the same one. If it's on the wrong wall, move it. You're not a tree.
So towards the end of each interview, I have various questions that I love to ask, and these get their own kind of section on YouTube and that kind of thing. Would you be happy to share the best piece of advice you ever had?
Certainly, yeah. The best piece of advice I've had is the best things in life are on the other side of fear. So when you're actually looking at doing something, if it feels a bit uncomfortable, think about when you walk into a room and you feel that imposter syndrome where you don't feel like you're worthy enough. It's a massive signal that you're probably in the right room. And the best things in life are on the other side of fear. So if you do something that challenges you, then what you become as a result of going through that fear it's so worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So challenge yourself a bit more, do things that are uncomfortable, so that then you become comfortable with that new level of comfort. And that's where growth exists. If you just keep being where you are comfortable, you're not really growing. And I don't think anybody really wants to not grow. So it's feel fear. And the best things in life are on the other side of fear.
Do you ever watch any of the kind of SES Who Dares Wins Armed Forces
Yes.
special? I knew you would.
Yeah.
I knew you would. But
Well, I don't watch a lot of TV, to be candid, but my son watches it,
okay.
and I don't mind him watching that because he can learn a lot from
Yeah.
it. And it is about, leaning back on the big thing with the drop, and they have to put their hands across and just fall backwards, and it's all those things to learn more about themselves. It's how you feel. I did a parachute jump. I remember I actually looked at this the other day. I've been up in more planes that have landed because I've jumped out of one. And when you're jumping out of a plane, it's a big thing where you're there and you're thinking, oh, I don't really want to do this. And you don't know. Some people might want to do it, but for me, it was a bit sort of fearful. And you're there and you're on the edge of the plane. You're about to jump out, and he goes, right, we're going to go out. And I'm with somebody, I'm not on my own. And he says, right, we're going to go out on 3. Ready? 1, and he throws you out because a lot of people try and hang on.
Yeah.
So you're going down, and you've got that moment where you're literally in the plane where everything's safe. Just suddenly, a nanosecond, everything is completely unsafe and in a new area to you. And it becomes this almost feeling of bliss where all this pent up fear is suddenly released, and you are there and you are falling. And I've got a video. They said, I did it actually in Australia when I was speaking at a conference there. And I just sent this video home to my son and other half. They didn't even know I was doing it. And they were like, what has he done? And you see this moment where I'm falling, and I actually turn to the guy who's the instructor with me. And I say to him, I'm actually falling. And he went, yeah, because that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But you've only ever done it normally in a dream or something when you're going to sleep, when your leg flies down through the bed. But you've actually got enough time to register you are actually falling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bliss. And then you land and you see me with this big beaming face, and you think, I've done something that I was frightened of. And it's a really good thing to do. Really, really good thing.
Great answer. Great answer. The other question that I love to ask is that if you were to give advice to your younger self, what would it be? But the reason why I like to frame it that way is that throughout kind of exploring your journey a little bit and asking you about school, and one of the things, for instance, is that I imagine when you first got your exam results, and maybe perhaps they weren't quite as good as they
definitely weren't as good as everyone thought they might be.
But it's that kind of thing that with experience and age, you can look back and I wish I could have given myself advice when I was 16, 20, 28, 26 last week. So if you were to give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Do more, try more, risk more. Whether that's in sport, when people say to you, because all very well, it's easy to say no sometimes. Somebody invites you to something or wants you to try something, and you think, oh, I'm not sure. Just do more. Try things out. And we do this with my son, is that and I think probably my experience means that he's getting a better one, because I don't want him to be kind of boxed in by me and my narrow thinking that I had at the time. But with him, I see him going off and trying everything, even if he doesn't like it. So actually, he did do Cub Scouts, for example, for a couple of sessions. He just said, it's not really for me. It's like, that's absolutely fine. Same with food. Take him up to Borough Market when he was really young, and there was things like duck there that he'd never eaten before. Like, try it. And he was going up to all these stall holders, just going, well, I'm going to try it, And it's do more. And I wish that I'd done more and not been so afraid of actually doing things because of maybe I was shy or whatever. And it's about showing you the full spectrum, all the colours, and see what colour appeals to you, because you never know where life takes you. And I think that life is good fun. My dad also said to me when I was younger, 2 things you need to know. You need to know how to play golf and how to play chess. I'm like, why? He goes, golf, because you're always going to get asked at some point, somebody want to do it, and you don't want to miss out, whether you're good at it or not, which I'm not. And he said, and chess is all about strategy. You have to think ahead a couple of goes to think what they're thinking, and you need to do that a lot in life. Brilliant life lessons. So that's not the sort of thing they teach you at school, but I wish I'd done more like that. So I'm trying to impart that knowledge to my son, and hopefully it'll work out.
Do you think your parents are proud of you now?
Yes, they are, and they do tell me. Especially, I know because when I do things like the radio or the television that I've been on, and I'll be around seeing them, and they will say to me, "Oh, one of our friends, so and so, heard you the other day or saw you the other day," and you can just see that they were as pleased as punch that their friend was telling them about their son. So it kind of validates it. But they also do tell me as well, which is
That's
nice.
nice.
They do say, oh, "You make it, you do make us proud," and I make sure I tell my son that as well, because it's a big word. It's only 5 letters,
Mm,
but it's a big thing. So I say to my son, I said, "You make me proud," and it's a really good thing. So yeah, being a bit vulnerable and being more honest, lose some of the stiff upper lip, I think, and we should learn to be a bit more social with each other and a bit more honest when compliments are due.
got it. Got it. Is there anything you would like to talk about or plug before we go?
Not that I can think of. We have had a long chat about all sorts of different things, and
See,
it's
you
been,
said at the start you like organization. You're impressed with the poster. We had the
look at that.
questions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Loved it. And it's great. And I think what's been brilliant about this is it feels like it has been a chat that is almost as though people are eavesdropping at us, having a coffee somewhere and just having a conversation. And it's flowed really well. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I will genuinely say this to you: you have made me feel better.
And
So
you've
thank you.
talked 60 minutes.
There you go.
But the thing is, I'm with you, is that ironically, I was like, unfortunately, I've had a lot of family illness. And ironically, a lot of the men in my family seem to get cancer or die above 50, which just sounds brutal, but it's true. So it's almost where now that I'm 40, I'm enjoying life now consciously every day, as opposed to working the hours that I was doing in the past, on the hope that manana I might get time off. But actually, for me, it sounds silly, but I want to look back in another 40 years on YouTube, if it still exists, and I can watch back. Oh, I remember David. Yeah, I remember that. And for me, it sounds silly, but I enjoy the process. But I genuinely value people's experience. So a lot of the stuff you've said today is really good. And then even just completely selfishly, if this didn't even get broadcast, I find value and I enjoy it. And a good friend who's a lecturer in philosophy, I was having a tough time probably about 7 years ago, and he said, "Look, do you feel like you're flourishing?" And at that time, I wasn't, but I do now. And this kind of lifts me up. And that goes back to just being around good people, doing good things, sharing the story. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but yeah. Well,
and you say, do enough the right thing, do enough the right thing, and everything will follow. It's about doing the right and decent thing. And and you said earlier on, when no one's watching is the key. It's still doing the right thing. And people know. They just know that you do.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for your time this Thursday. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I'm sure we'll definitely kind of stay in touch. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Bye.
Thank you.